Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everyone, David Aragona here, kicking off the 2023 TimeformUS Road to the Derby series. You've probably seen me do these videos in past years, handicapping all of the major Kentucky Derby preps that are offering significant points towards qualification to the Kentucky Derby on the first Saturday in May. And with the calendar turning to January and these 2-year-olds becoming 3-year-olds, it's time to get into Derby prep season. And it kicks off in New York on Saturday with the Jerome Stakes, this race going a mile on the main track, one turn, offering 10 Kentucky Derby qualifying points to the winner of this race. Let's throw up the field of 8 runners in this Jerome, and I think we've got a pretty legitimate favorite here in the number 6 Arctic Arrogance, a Linda Rice trained runner who is a New York bred, but he ran very well last time against Open Company and the Remsen, and I think that performance gives him a class edge over his rivals in this Jerome, hence his 8-5 morning line price. But there are some runners in here that are trying stakes for the first time, some that appear to have some upside on the way into this race, like the number 1 Neural Network, a second-time starter, and the number 4 Lucan Knight. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of a challenge Arctic Arrogance really gets here if he runs back to his Remsen performance from last time. With this being the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series, we're going to be looking at some TimeformUS PP elements as we handicap these races, and one of those, of course, is the TimeformUS pace projector. And you can see here that the number 5 Andiamo a Firenze is the one who's shown leading this field early over the number 4 Lucan Knight. Both of these runners are stretching out from sprint races in their most recent starts, and they've shown speed in those races, so no surprise to see them shown towards the front end here. The number 5 Andiamo a Firenze is a horse that has tried a mile once before, showed a lot of speed in the Champagne, but had trouble getting the distance that day. We'll see if it's a similar situation here. That favorite Arctic Arrogance positioned in a pretty good spot on the pace projector, stalking outside, vying for 3rd place there. One other element of the TimeformUS PPs that you might not be familiar with is the new finish projector, which you can find in the new version of TimeformUS PPs that we're launching in DRF mobile PPs right now. And you can just toggle over to the TimeformUS tab in your DRF mobile PPs to access the new pace projector and this finish projector, which just is basically a visual representation of the TimeformUS power picks that you might be familiar with from the classic TimeformUS PPs. And it just basically shows the top 3 picks by TimeformUS's algorithm, but it lays them out across the racetrack, kind of showing the relationships between these runners as they come to the finish line. And you can see that it's really predicting that the 2 New York breds, the number 6 Arctic Arrogance and the number 5 Andiamo a Firenze, have the advantage here based on TimeformUS data coming into this Jerome. Not a big surprise there, as they both run some of the better speed figures in this field as 2-year-olds. Well, let's get into some of the main contenders in this race, and we're going to begin by looking at that favorite, the number 6 Arctic Arrogance. And we'll check out his last race when he was a very good second over a sloppy track in the Grade 2 Remsen. They stretched him out to go a mile and an eighth on this day, and he handled the added distance pretty well. You can see he's giving the eventual winner, WNL, everything that he can handle coming down to the wire here, battling back gamely on the inside after setting the early pace. Looks like he might come back for a brief moment here in deep stretch, but WNL is able to edge out and get the victory as they come on to the wire. Arctic Arrogance will be cutting back to the 1 mile distance here, and he handled that configuration without any trouble back when he was an impressive winner against New York breds in the Sleepy Hollow, earning a pretty respectable 98 TimeformUS speed figure that day. As you can see, he took a big jump up to a 110 figure last time when he was second in that Remsen. A repeat of that kind of number is going to make him awfully tough for this Jerome field to beat, and he is a runner that projects to get a pretty good trip sitting outside of some pace rivals drawn to his inside. That other runner that the TimeformUS finish projector was predicting to do well in this race, the number 5 Andiamo a Firenze, is also a New York bred, and we'll take a look at his last race when he actually faced state breds at Finger Lakes in the New York Breeders' Futurity. He was a heavy favorite this day, getting bet down to 1-2 favoritism. And I thought it was a little bit disappointing that he didn't get the job done here. You can see he's battling back between horses here. The runner to his inside, the eventual winner, Acoustic Avenue, is a pretty nice New York bred sprinter who has some grit and gameness to him. He's won a bunch of races on his own. So I guess Andiamo Firenze was just nosed out by that wire, who was showing a lot of grit down towards the inside. But still, 6 furlongs is his best distance. And he wasn't able to seal the deal as a heavy favorite that day, so I'm a little bit skeptical about him stretching back out to this 1 mile distance. You will notice that he ran the best TimeformUS speed figure of his career going a mile when he was a distant 4th in that Champagne, but as you can see, he's getting a big pace upgrade for that race because he was setting an honest pace and just really faded badly at the end there. I'm concerned a similar situation is going to transpire here with there being other speed signed on in this Jerome. Another New York bred in this field, and there are quite a few of them, is the number 7 General Banker. And we'll take a look at his last race when he won a New York Stallion Series stakes race with a pretty big purse, $500,000. And he was actually breaking his maiden on this occasion. He had come into this race off 7 consecutive losses to start his career, but had run deceptively well in his race just prior to this against Maiden Company and took yet another step forward to win this stakes race pretty decisively. He draws off in the slop to win by over 8 lengths and earned the best speed figure of his career, a 101 TimeformUS speed figure. I think he's going to have to do a little bit better than that if he's to beat a horse like Arctic Arrogance, assuming that one holds his form. But he's handled 2 turns on the turf before, so a 1-turn mile on the dirt shouldn't pose a whole lot of problems for this horse. I think he's just getting a pretty big class test because this is a tougher field than that group of New York Stallion-sired runners that he faced last time out. One runner that is actually one of the only Kentucky breds in this field is the number 4, Lugan Knight. And we'll take a look at his race 2 back when he broke his maiden at Keeneland. This was the second start of his career, and I thought he got a really good education in this race. You can see that's him in the red cap in behind the leaders there, kind of searching for room. Florent Giroux tried to go inside of that runner that was on the lead, ultimately had to angle between horses here. And I like the way that Lugan Knight professionally kicks on once he finds some daylight, and he gets involved in a bit of a tussle here with the second place finisher and is able to draw away from that rival as they come onto the wire. Thought this was a pretty game performance from him, and he came right back to face winners in his next start, and I thought once again showed a lot of determination getting up for 3rd behind a pretty good horse in victory formation, a Brad Cox trained runner who's highly regarded and came back to win the Smarty Jones at Oaklawn in his next start. So Lugan Knight definitely has some quality to him. We'll see if he's able to handle the stretch out to the 1 mile distance. He's never gone farther than 6.5 furlongs before, and there's a little bit more speed on the bottom side of his pedigree, so we'll have to see how he handles the stretch out to the 1-turn mile in this Jerome. Another runner that is trying stakes for the first time is the number 1 Neural Network. Let's take a look at his maiden victory, actually his debut victory, as this was the only start of his career. And I thought this Chad Brown trained runner put in a pretty professional effort for a horse that did not take that much money. He went off at a generous 5-1 on debut against a pretty solid field of New York breds, and I like the way he powers away from this group in the final stages. You can see coming into this final furlong, he's just got these big loping strides that he's using to put distance between himself and the rest of the field. The 3rd place finisher from that race, Drake's Passage, did come back to win his next start with a solid speed figure, kind of validating the 92 TimeformUS speed figure that Neural Network earned for his debut. And he just strikes me as one that is going to get better with added distance. He's by the Preakness winner, Cloud Computing. What I've seen so far of his progeny suggests that he's a sire that will ultimately give more stamina to his runners. And on the dam side, while there's not a whole lot of pedigree up close, the dam hasn't produced much, nor has the second dam. This is the distant female family of Bernardini if you go a little bit further back in the pedigree. So there's definitely some evidence that Neural Network is going to appreciate some more ground. And I found an interesting formulator stat for trainer Chad Brown, with horses that have won their debuts coming back for their second starts in a 1 mile race on the dirt over the past 5 years. He's 8 for 16, a 50% win rate with a $2.44 ROI. So when Chad gets these runners to win their debuts and stretches them out to a mile in their next starts, he typically gets them to improve and perform well. So I think that makes Neural Network very dangerous in this Jerome. One more horse that I'll mention is the other runner for trainer Linda Rice in here. She obviously has the favorite Arctic Arrogance. She also sends out the number 3 Valenzende. He's got some speed figures that put him in the mix. That 102 that he earned last time is not that far off some of the contenders in this race, but that was going 7 furlongs. He's never gone farther than that in his career. He's going to have to stretch out to the mile here. I think what's interesting about him, though, is he is making his first start off the claim for Linda Rice, and I found another formulator stat that applies to this source that's pretty positive. For trainer Linda Rice, first off the claim over the past 3 months, she's had a lot of success with this move. 13 for 29. That's a 45% win rate with an ROI that is above $3. So you've really had to pay attention to these Linda Rice claims at Aqueduct in recent months. And interesting that she gets ambitious with a horse like Valenzinde, moving him up into stakes company first time out in her barn. But he does feel like one that would have to improve to be effective in this Jerome. Well, those are the main contenders. So let's throw out my picks in this Jerome Stakes from Saturday at Aqueduct. And I'm going with the number 1 Neural Network. I just think he's got a lot of upside. I like the way he finished up in his debut. And Chad Brown, as I noted, has those great stats with second-time starters going this 1 mile distance on the dirt. I'm not against the favorite, the number 6 Arctic Arrogance. I think he's a pretty legitimate favorite. Just feels like he could be a pretty short price in this race. And I think that's slightly better value on the number 1 Neural Network. So that's a look at the Jerome Stakes in the TimeformUS Road to the Kentucky Derby Series. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.